Yam and Yabosha, the whole idea of the Chiddush of Kriyas Yamsuf, the novelty of Kriyas Yamsuf, is that we have this unusual situation of the the opposites of what was set up in the rules of the creation takes place. That instead of the dry land remaining dry and the sea being sea, that is completely beyond the rules of nature, and that's why we say it's difficult to do it like Kriyas Yamsuf, even Kaviyachol for Hashem. And spiritually, that means as well that you have the idea of things that are likened to sea creatures, those things that are bottled to Elokus, like in the Oil Misal Yoinim, Alma Diskasia, Alma Stimen, and there is the Nivroim of Alma Disgalia, that this is like creatures of the dry land, that they are not connected to their source of life, and therefore it's much harder for them to recognize godliness in the world. So they are distinct and separate in the spiritual realms. Now we're going to talk about, just like in the physical Kriyas Yamsuf, things were changed around from the sea to dry land. The same thing, you have the change and the removing of these boundaries of things that are considered removed and separate from godliness, or things that have to work hard on recognizing godliness versus those levels that do recognize godliness. Again, line 19, page 5. Through a person's service, he can come to such a situation. Also in the world down here below, he should be in a state of the concealed world. There's an expression based on the Zohar, taken from the Zohar, fish of the sea that are traveling on dry land. In other words, even though they're in dry land, they still have the bittul of being in the sea, completely connected with Hashem. Like it says concerning Rav Amnuna Sava, it says in the Zohar about him that he was one of these type of individuals that was able to have in the dry land, being down here below, he should be in a situation of as if he is in the sea, he's not disconnected from Hashem. And also the similar vein, which Matzina Gabi Yosef, like you find concerning Yosef, it says about Yosef Ayove, that Yosef Atzadik came home to do his work. So the Targum translates, Targum Onkelos says, to check on the bookkeeping ledgers. Even though he was dealing with such mundane worldly matters as managing finances, still in all, he was a chariot to a divine vehicle for Atzilus. There was no contradiction that he could be in this world involved in financial things and still be bottled to Atzilus. And this Yosef brought down to his sons, Ephraim and Menashe, down to page Yud, continue to page Yud, and through Ephraim and Menashe to all Yidden. Why? What's the connection between Ephraim and Menashe and all Yidden? Like it says, that in you, Ephraim and Menashe, all Yidden will bless themselves by. In other words, all Yidden will wish to be in the state of Ephraim and Menashe, that they should have this attitude of, or this being able to be connected to Hashem even while being down here in the earth. And this is hinted also in the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave Ephraim and Menashe. That says, Shagam Etzlam Yuchalias Inin V'yidgol B'Kerev Oretz. It says about that Yaakov benched Ephraim and Menashe, they will be like multiplying like the fish within the earth. So here we find this joining of sea metaphor and earth metaphor. Also in the midst of the earth, meaning on dry land, they'll be like the fish on the sea. Almin stimin, which is the idea of the neshamas of the concealed worlds, that they are completely bottled to Hashem. That's the idea of fish of the sea, that they travel on dry land. The general idea behind this is, let's explain in Tanya. Through Torah study and fulfillment of mitzvahs, becomes a chariot and a vehicle, it becomes nullified to Hashem. Until we affect also, and we influence in the world the idea that he calls out over there in the name of Hashem, Kael Olam. And we know that what the Friedrich Rebbe says in the Maimer and Basilagani, the Rebbe always quotes that it doesn't say Kael HaOlam, God of the world, but God and world. It's not that there's two separate matters, God and world, that the world itself is godliness, Havaya Kael Olam, that Havaya is God and world, because there's nothing beside him, the world is not outside of him. So this is accomplished through Torah mitzvahs, that we effect this crossing of boundaries, this spiritual idea of splitting of the sea, that the dry land and the sea becomes intermingled. Line 13. So there should be able to be the idea of transforming the sea to dry land, in the literal splitting of the sea. And also to accomplish this also in the service of a person. So we're going to see what took place then, what were the things that were done then, in a similar vein, what's going to be done, or what needs to be done in our void. Concerning this, it was told to Moshe Rabbeinu, you raise up your staff. What's the idea behind this? What's the idea behind this? Staff is a hard thing. It's made out of a tree branch after it was dried and hardened. Or there could even be a staff that's initially hard. Just like the staff of Moshe that was from a certain precious stone that was very hard. What's the idea of the Mata Moshe in the spiritual worlds? What's the idea of hardness in the spiritual worlds? These three worlds of Bia Ad until the world of Asiya, that says that from the Gan Eden they will spread out, meaning that the worlds of Bria Asiya is something that is separated from Elikuz, Shaykh Behem Shinui. In the worlds of Bia, because they are separated from godliness, there's changes. Changes indicate that it's not tough, it's not hard, it's not strong. Therefore, they're not called a staff. That a staff indicates power and strength and malleability, change, that's applicable in the worlds of Bia, because they're separated from godliness, does not apply the term of Mata. Top of page Yud Aleph, only the world of Atzilus, Nikra b'shem Mata, it's called by the name Mata, Shein Yonoi Eson, because the idea of the Mata is strength. V'zeu inyan Mata Moshe, that's the idea of Moshe's staff. As it says, Matcha, in the pasuk it says you should take your Mata. What's the idea of Matcha? Shezoi Dargas Moshe, indicating that the staff over here that we're talking about is on the level of Moshe. All of them are concerning Moshe. It says, I am standing between Hashem and you. How come? How was he between Hashem and the Jewish people? Because the neshama was neshama from the world of Atzilus, which has to do with Mata, like we said before. Concerning this, it says to Moshe, you should raise up your staff to be able to affect the idea of transforming sea to dry land. We have to draw down from a level that's beyond the chain order of descent. Even higher than Atzilus. That's why it's not just enough the Mata. The Mata alone, which is a level of Atzilus, the staff alone is not enough. It has to be Harem. You need to go higher than Atzilus. The entire reason of Atzilus is that eventually should be able to come down the knowledge of godliness down here below. So it's still the world of Atzilus shows that it has some type of connection, some type of association with the lower worlds. So you need to be able to join these two opposites between each other. You can't deal with something that's connected with the worlds. You have to transcend any level of the worlds. That's why it has to be take Atzilus and raise it higher. Hadrei mesmatcha. So he says in line 10, we asked earlier in the Maimer, why did it have to be in the splitting of the sea? The strong eastern wind, the Ruach Kodim, what does it mean, an eastern wind? Kodim is also in the word early, prefacing, the first. It means a spirit, a level that emanates from the early one of the world, from the first one of the world, meaning Hashem. Hashem's very essence. Therefore, it says to Moshe, raise up your staff beyond the world of Atzilus. Well, Protis Yoser, more specifically, raise up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and split it. These are two opposite movements over here. First of all, you have to raise up your staff, meaning going from below to above. And stretch out your hand. That means, or lean over your hand, or bring your hand down, meaning from above to below. So both these movements had to be by the splitting of the sea. Initially, there has to be raising up your staff. So it's the idea of raising up beyond Atzilus. And afterwards, stretch out your hand or bring down your hand from above to below. To draw down the idea of transforming sea to dry land that also manifests and reaches even to the world of Asiya. The fact that it says Neteas Yodcha, specifically it says Yodcha. What's the significance of Yodcha? Ubechinas Hayud. Yod is the same letters like the word Yud. What is that Yud? The letter Yud signifies and indicates the root of everything that comes down from above to below. That's why the letter Yud is the source of all letters. In what way is Yud the source of all letters? Every letter begins from a point. A point is the form what a Yud looks like. The Yud signifies the constriction that every Hamshacha needs to go to when it comes from above to below. First, Hashem has to constrict himself. First, the Mashpi has to constrict himself. That's the letter Yud that begins every letter of the Aleph base. And this same idea that the Yud is the drawing that the beginning of all Hamshachas, this is the same idea concerning where it says open up your hands. Al tikri yadecha ela yudecha. The Zohar says an expression, do not read it your hands, but your Yuds, because the Yud needs to be opened up. The Tzimtzum, the beginning of the Hamshacha, needs to be opened up to get more Hamshacha down. This is also the root of all the Hamshachas, all the revelations of the Orin Sof that comes down from above to below through Torah mitzvahs. Top of Yud Beis, that's also the exact language that he uses, Yodcha, meaning the hand of Moshe, Shinyane Torah. That Moshe represents the idea of Torah, like it says, Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. And we're saying that the Torah of mitzvahs is what begins the Hamshacha, draws everything down. You have to have Neteyas Yodcha, open up, bring from the Yud, and through the Torah mitzvahs down here. Line 3, Kidu, as it's known, Shekriyas Yam Sefay Sachonel Matan Torah. The splitting of the sea was a preparation for Matan Torah. Because like everything, Yetzias Mitzrayim, and specifically the splitting of the sea was like the opening of all the levels, which is similar to what took place on Matan Torah, that all the highest levels came down here. From this comes down the power also for the splitting of the sea. That's in the service of the person, like we said before in Siv Daled, that through Torah mitzvahs, a person is able to split the sea, meaning bring the sea into dry land, bring the experience of Alman Stimin, of completely recognizing one's source, even down here, while one is involved in physical, mundane matters, like Yosef HaTzadik did, and this is all thanks to Torah mitzvahs, like we mentioned before. After it was affected, the difficult matter of Kriyas Yamsuf, the first time around, this opens up the way. Like it's known concerning an expression that's constantly found in the Zohar, that Reb Shimon opened up. Meaning, the simple meaning is when he began to speak on a certain topic. But it's more than that. Reb Shimon ben Yochai in the Zohar opened up ways and revelations so it should be available to us. So this is so now we can go back to the topic that what took place by Kriyas Yamsuf was a beginning and an opening up and a start for what take place later on by the Gula Asidah. So that opened up line 10. Yuchuli is Gam King Losid, King Gam Losid Love. This will also take place when Mashiach comes. Kasher Yotza Chayter Chulum V'Gaimer, when a shoot will come out from Yishai Shezom Mashenamra V'Hechrim Havayis L'Shen Yam Mitzrayim. It says also when Mashiach comes that he will dry out the tongue of the sea of Mitzrayim. And he will raise up his hand over the river in the strength of his spirit, meaning similar to the Kriyas Yamsuf. There'll also be this type of splitting of waters and so on. This means, though the matters of the future time, of Mashiach's times, including also the idea that he'll raise his hand over the river. Mitzrayim will be in a way of wonders in comparison to going on in Mitzrayim. Ukriyas Yamsuf, and the splitting of the sea. Including also, it doesn't say nifla in the yachid, in the singular, but it says niflois in the plural. What does the plural mean? The miut rabim shnaim. The minimum of plurality is two, meaning that in the word niflois is included two wonders. The Koi al Shteyat Kufis, the Yemaisa Mashiach V'Olam Haba, it refers to the two eras of the days of Mashiach when things will not yet be miraculous, and the days of the world to come, by Tchias HaMeisim and onward, that then things will be completely miraculous. And this is hinted also in our Shabbos davening. Efes B'Il Tchol Yemaisa Mashiach, there's no one besides you to the days of Mashiach. That's one era. Ve'ein Doim L'cha, there's no one similar to you, L'Tchias HaMeisim, to the second era that begins with the resurrection. Mikal Malkin, still in all, even though that it's Mashiach's times is so much higher and so much greater, it's wondrous in comparison to what took place in Mitzrayim. Still in all, the preparation for it and the beginning for this was when he transformed the sea to dry land in the splitting of the sea. Through that they will cross in the river. In the future time, like we said, the two halves of the pasuk. The pasuk begins Hafach Yamli Abasha, which is talking about the past. In the past, he transformed sea to dry land, and then comes about because of that. As a result of that, the second half of the pasuk that he says in the river they will cross by foot. Line 24. The idea behind this is it's explained concerning his raising his hand over the river. The Koyal Nahar Pros, it's going on the river Euphrates. Shahev the Euphrates, Shahev ben Yamsuf and Har Pros, the difference between the Yamsuf that was split and then Har Pros that Mashiach is going to split, top of Yud Gimel, but Dugmas Hahevel Machshavel Dib. It's similar to the difference between thought and speech. Bina Malchus. In Spheres, Malchus has to do with Dibur, like we know many places it has to do with speech, and Bina is associated with thought. The Malchus, so not Dibur, Malchus, the level of speech. Soifa, the called Dargin, is the end of all levels. Also hinted in the words Yam Suf. Suf, he's playing off Suf off the word Soif, meaning the end. Yam Suf is referring to Malchus. Ubina, which is Hasagala Atzmo, it's not about speech, it's about understanding for oneself. It's not about communication. It's the idea of thought, which goes back to what we spoke about earlier, It's the concealed worlds that were not revealed. And the splitting of the sea, the split was only in the level of Malchus, that what was in the concealed level should come out revealed. That was a preparation for the giving of the Torah, because by the giving of the Torah, what was openly given was the revealed part of the Torah. In the future time, the splitting of the sea will be, it won't be a sea, it'll be the river. That's the level of Bina that will be split. This will be a preparation for the revelation of the inner part and the thought part of Torah, meaning the secrets of the Torah, etc. That the inner part of the Torah will become down into the revealed part of the Torah, and the revealed part of the Torah will come elevated to the inner part of the Torah, this inner part, and the thought of the Torah, that's called the Torah of Mashiach's times. He will teach Torah for the entire nation, until such a manner that the Navi says that I will pour out my spirit over all people, because all will know me. That is the revelation of the inner part of the Torah. Line 14. We can connect this with what it says in the chapter Tilm, chapter 74, which is the Tilm that the Rebbe started saying that year, Yud Aleph Nisan and Tavshin Lamed Hey, that Elikim is my king from early on. He effects salvations within the earth. My king from early on. It's referring to what it says prior to that. It says, this Malki Mikedem is referring to the other Kedem that says, remember your congregation that you acquired early on. What does that mean? Pirish Rashi, when is this Kedem that you acquired your congregation? When were the Jewish people acquired by Hashem? So Rashi explains, the Jewish people were acquired by Hashem before the creation of the world. The Kedisa Medrash, like it's brought down the Medrash Shiva, Dvarim called Milibriya Soilam, 7 things preceded the creation of the world. Yisrael Menayin, how do we know that the Eden preceded everything? Shenemar Zechayra Doscha Kenisa Kedem, because it says, remember your congregation that you acquired early, before everything. But not only are they part of the 7 that preceded the world, amongst the things that preceded the world. That the Chazal say, if not for certain things, we wouldn't know which one preceded which. In Machshavtan shall Yisrael called Molchal Davar, the thought of Yidden preceded everything. That's obvious from the fact that it says in the Torah, command the Bnei Yisrael, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, meaning the Bnei Yisrael existed even before Torah, that these are the 2 highest things. Therefore, it says like the continuation of the pasuk. After it says, it says, Ga'alta Shevet Nachal Secha, it says, you redeemed the Shevet, the tribe of your lot, the Koyal Agul of Mitzrayim. It's referring to the redemption of Mitzrayim, that the Hashem redeemed them. In the redemption of Mitzrayim is included also the completion of going out of Mitzrayim, B'kriyas Yamsuf, in the splitting of the sea, that was through this eastern wind, from the Kadmoin of the world, like we said, the preceding one of the world, like we said before in Ois Hay. And afterwards, I will bring you to the land, like it says, until the Mount of Tzia, and that in this you dwelled in it, like continuing the end of the pasuk over there in Tehillim. In a similar vein will also be when Mashiach comes. When they will cross the river by foot, through raising up his hand over the river, top of page Yudal. Not only that, even when we find ourselves in our double and quadruple darkness of this final goal is Hashem, that's my king from early on, the earliest part before the world. He effects salvations and assistance within the earth. How much more so does he do this in the time of the redemption? When Hashem takes the sun out of his sheath, until we fulfill the promise, the spirit of Tumah will remove from the earth. All this happens through the prefacing of the avodah these days, in the way of transforming sea to dry land. Beginning from the opinion of the Zohar, that the splitting of the sea meant that Yabasha, the dry land, which has to do with the created worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah, goes up to the Yam, goes up to the world of Atzilus. What does that mean in our service? He elevates his earthly things to holiness from below to above. The Arizal's opinion holds that the splitting of the sea is about bringing the sea into the dry land, bringing Atzilus into Bri Yitzir Asiyah. Draws down holiness in all matters. By days of boim was man shaboy tiavoy the kiyom to the mitzvahs rak boy from shalis mechayel choil b'kedusha gdufa. Through that we arrive at a time that there will be the service of fulfilling Torah mitzvahs only in a way of ascending from strength to strength in kedusha itself. Va'adlas man diyem shekul Shabbos v'nuchol chayalam until the time when it's entirely Shabbos and rest and peace forever. L'maylam menucham minin aliyas, beyond the rest, from the idea of elevations in a sense. V'sham nischol boy, over there we will rejoice in him. Boy batz musay, in him is very essence, because of mamish, soon mamish.